everything, but this will be a lot of fun. So how did you get even like where'd you grow up? I always like to hear the people's beginnings, of course. So are you a California kid or where are
Where
you
are you
from?
from?
I'm in Jersey.
Oh, you're in Jersey. Okay, well, I was born here essentially to you in Los Angeles, but Glendale, which is a little
Okay.
suburb in Los Angeles, and I spend my whole life pretty much in and around the San Fernando Valley, and if you think about it, here's really good images of what my experience was. Did you watch
Okay.
the Wonder Years, the
Oh
TV
yeah,
show
yeah.
Wonder Years?
Oh yeah.
That was my early childhood. Did you
Really?
watch that 70s show?
Yep.
That was my high school years.
That was your high school years? Yeah.
Yeah. After that, I got in the industry and my whole life was different.
So how'd that happen? Since you grew up, Glendale's not too far. There's a bunch of people that I've talked to that are like from that area. So what was it a movie that you saw, or like how did you get into working with polyurethane?
I'm one of the very few people that can actually say this story this way. Actually, now there are a
Okay.
few more, but my whole life I was the only one. In 1941, my grandfather, who was an artist, basically sculptor, did monuments and things in the Midwest.
Uh,
He he moved to Hollywood thinking he might be able to get into, film and do some stuff. So he got a job making a few things here and there, but then he got a job making a cane, a silver-headed wolf's head cane for 1941's The Wolfman.
oh my
He met
god.
Jack Pierce, who did the Wolfman makeup, and Jack said, "Well, you mold and sculpt and paint and do all those things ahead of time. I build up right on the actor. Is if there was a way you could do stuff and not tell anybody, I could keep you busy." So my grandfather started making all the stuff for like the Universal horror sequels.
Wow.
Whenever you saw the mummy in a bad mask, that was probably my uncle. But he did like House of Frankenstein, the Wolfman frozen in ice, and all of that kind of stuff.
But he couldn't tell
And
anybody that it was him. He's working. He was just in the shadows. The other
well,
guy was his name was on
yeah, pretty
everything.
much, pretty much.
Okay.
Jack was very secretive and all of that stuff, and he would do all this stuff. But he kept my grandfather busy. My grandfather was not a
Yeah.
limelight person or anything. He just wanted to do the work and make money and feed his family. That's all he cared about.
Yeah.
You know. But when my father was a child, he would have to help my grandfather in his workshop during summer vacation and things like that. And so my dad learned about making molds and casting parts and doing all that stuff. And he would assist my grandfather on different things. So he was assisting him on a job where my grandfather was working for the Dawn Post Mask Company, making a full size,
Okay.
well, not full size,
Yeah.
like half size King Kong, and for a museum in Niagara Falls. So he was working on that, and the guys in the shop there said, "Hey, they're looking for an apprenticeship program thing for people to sign up at 20th Century Fox. You ought to go check it out. I think today's like the last day to do it." So my dad just took off on the job, went down to 20th Century Fox, and out of 100 people, he and three other guys got chosen. Well, my dad got chosen because he had experience making molds and working in a lab. And back then, if you were in the makeup lab at Fox, that's what you did. You did make noses and things like that for all your character stuff and whatnot. So he was there for about 6 months. This is in like 1964, 65, something like that.
Planet of the
Uh,
Apes? Is that around Planet of the Apes time or a little before then?
before,
Okay.
in fact, my dad was sweeping the floors in the lab as an apprentice, and Ben Nye comes in and says, "Oh, we've got a job to do, and it's going to be the most amazing thing we've ever done, and it's nobody's ever done anything like this before. We need all the best guys. Who can we get?" And who did the list of Adrian Messenger? Who did that? And well, those are the Westmores. Well, let's call the Westmores. And my dad was like, John Chambers did all the lab work on that, they're like, "Well, do you know how to get a hold of him?" "Oh, yeah, he's my neighbor. I can get you his number and all that." So they called John Chambers and brought John Chambers in, and he went in and met with him. And he comes out of the office with a script and looks at my dad and he goes, "We're gonna win a fucking Oscar, boy." And it was Planet of the Apes. And so John and
Wow.
my dad started the whole project on a like 4 foot by 8 foot table in the back of the lab at Fox. And that
That's
was the whole
really
beginning.
cool.
So
That's
by the time,
insane.
and I was 4 at the time. So by the time I was out of high school, or late in high school, I noticed all my friends were getting jobs and making money, and I was like, "Well, I want to make money. I don't really want a job, but I want to make money, you know." So I tried being a janitor for a while, working nights, and that really sucked. It was terrible. And I tried being a dishwasher at an ice cream parlor because all my friends worked at the ice cream parlor. So I'll go work for them, and that really sucked. So so I came back and I told my dad. I said, your shop is a mess. What if I cleaned your shop at night and then you could come into a shop the next day, a nice clean day, and we'll come in like every other day. So that's what we did. We we would clean his shop at night, and he would come in the next day, and then I'd be in school. I was in 11th, 12th grade. I was senior in high school, and all of a sudden I would get a note. Somebody would come in with a note to the teacher, and they'd take it. Can Rob Berman go to the office, please? And so I'd have to go to the office. What do you want? What did I do? And it's a phone call for you. And it would be my dad. He'd be saying, "Where'd you put this? Where'd you put that?" I'd be like, "Well, it's over here. It's over there. I never saw it. I don't know what you're talking about. Whatever." And then he'd say, "Well, come in after school now." And I'm like, "Well, I was going to go. My friends after." "No, I need you after school." So I started coming in after school. And then when I graduated high school, I just kind of stayed. And then I was full time. And then I was kind of the foreman of the shop because I was the only one that knew where everything was and kept everything running. So I did all of that stuff for a couple of years. And then just a little bit after I graduated, the year after I graduated, he was going to lay me off. We'd done Happy Birthday to Me, My Bloody Valentine, The
Oh,
Beast Within,
wow.
and Cat People. And then he lays me off. I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." I'd been making like $500 a week. I was rich, you know. And so then he got a phone call from a friend of his that said he needed somebody to run foam latex on a show. And I'm like, "Well," or my dad's like, "Well, take my son. He's been running the foam for me." And that was the first thing I learned to do that I was kind of hireable to do. So I learned to do it foam latex and whatnot. So I went over in the interview, me and my best friend, who were kind of partners at the time, and we interviewed for the job. "Oh yeah, okay. Have you ever run big amounts of foam?" "Yeah, we run some large amounts. Some of the big mixers. They were like almost 500 grams of latex. So we mixed a lot of latex." And okay, great. And so that's fine. Here, come in there. And then we walked into a room with three 20-quart Hobart mixers. And they're like, "Okay, well, this is where you're going to work, and this and that and the other thing like that." And that turned out to be John Carpenter's The Thing. After that
Wow.
job, I kind of just decided, well, I guess this is what I'm going to do for my career. Might as well,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
Hey,
And
Rob, I have to ask, at that time when you were working, you must have been the only third generation,
yeah,
like, special
yeah,
effect, or really anything. Well, I'm sure there were
right.
some people, other people, but in special effects, that must
Um,
have been just you.
yeah, I can't think of any other right off the top of my head. I know that Michael Stein was second generation because we both went to school together, and then he went on to be a makeup artist as well. But yeah, very, very, very few. There's only the ones that I meet that are third generation now are all like 20 something.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
You know, so,
Wow, so John Carpenter The Thing. So that's amazing. So that's a good
yeah,
way to, obviously you had the experience like with your dad and running especially being that young of age and being a foreman, that's pretty important job to have on a set. So, and then you land that. So the thing, that's how long was that? Like, what was that?
I was
Were
on
you
the
always
thing
on
for
set, or were
about
you always
5
in the
months.
lab working?
Yeah, I spent 90% of my career in the lab.
Yeah.
Very little on-set work and everything. Back in those early days, almost never on set. Cat people, we did go to set a couple of times just to assist us. We made some deliveries, and my dad would say, "Here, stay here and help on this." And so I did a couple of those things. But the only time we were on set wasn't really on set. They set up a little film stage in the back room to do part of the Norris chest bursting effect. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
but other than that, they always shot at Universal on the lot, or we didn't really do any of the effects in Alaska. That was all pretty much, you know,
Yeah.
some stuff got sent up there, but most of it was done at Universal.
Wow. And then from there, so was your dad, when did your dad do this till?
My dad just retired a few years ago.
Oh my gosh,
He did
really? That's awesome.
what's the latest of the shows? Grey's Anatomy, I guess. When Nick
Oh, okay.
Tuck was over, he said he was going to retire. He's like, okay, I'm done with that. And then they came with like Grey's Anatomy and another show, Chicago Hope. No, I think that was before it, but he did a lot of TV, a lot of medical shows, a lot of all that stuff. Any of the stuff that you see on TV that really looks real, it was probably his.
Wow, man. And then how long did your grandpa work till? Did he work for a long time too?
He was mostly a prop maker and scenic artist.
Oh,
He
okay.
did a lot of stuff for the prop rental companies and things. He would make stuff for them, skulls and all kind of stuff like that. But he died back in like 1972, 74, something like that. So um yeah, he smoked like a chimney and just did not take care. Smoked like
Yeah.
a chimney and drank like a fish, and you don't
Yeah.
live long under those circumstances.
No, no. But
So
wow. So the thing, and then you took off from there. So you said you had a partner. Did you guys start any studios together or anything? Because I saw in
no,
some of the
Dale and I
credits,
pretty much
it's
took
the
most
Burman
of the jobs that
Studios.
we got together up until Ghostbusters. At the end of Ghostbusters, they were talking about um, breaking the crew down to less people and stuff, and I was like, I'm burnt out. I'll go. So I left, and he stayed. And then when he stayed, they went on to do like Fright Night and some stuff like that. But I went on
Yeah.
to at my dad's, or after that, I went on to first things I did with for my uncle. We worked on Clan of the Cave Bear and the Howling 2. But then I went
Nice.
over to my dad's and we did Teen Wolf and the Goonies back to back. So
Teen Wolf. What'd you guys work on? The suit? You guys put together the suit?
we made the Teen Wolf. Yeah, the whole
Nice.
transformation and yeah, everything, the whole makeup and all of that stuff. That was good to be on. I got to
That
be on
is.
set for that a little bit. Jeff Dawn applied for us, and but I went in and helped do some things like nail growing effects and stuff like that. In fact, I was
Nice. I
taking his
met
makeup
Chubbs.
off. Sorry,
No, I met Chubbs, the actor who plays Chubbs, Mark Holton. I interviewed him,
Chunk.
and then he just happened to be at
Oh,
Chubbs. Yeah, the big basketball player.
yeah. Oh, all right, okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, but I met him over the summer randomly at some
yeah.
signing in New Jersey. Yeah.
It's amazing the people you bump into in random places.
Yeah,
I ran
yeah.
into a friend of mine walking down the street in Beijing. I mean, how random is that? You know,
What? That's
looked at each
insane.
other like, what the hell are you doing here? Just
Yeah.
random.
Oh man. So before we talk about some of the other credits, you mentioned Ghostbusters. So I interviewed
Yeah.
Steve Neal, who I'm
Uh-huh.
sure you've worked with a
Sure,
bunch.
great
And
friend.
the reason I always think of him is because he's a huge Planet of the Apes fan. So he
Sure.
still, as a hobby, he casts like somehow he got like an original print, I think, from the movie. So he like does his own thing. Is that from you?
They're mine. Yeah, I have
That
original
is
molds from
insane.
the film, and I pulled copies out of them because they were in such bad shape, and I remastered them, made new molds, and now I'm having him finish off copies, and we're offering them for
That's awesome.
collectors.
That's amazing. It's such a small world. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Oh my god. That's the only thing I
The
love
next one
about
he's
it.
gonna
Like
do
the
for me is Close Encounters. The
close and
next one he's
wait.
gonna do for me is Close
Oh, the next
Encounters.
one he's gonna do for you? Oh, that's cool. No, I think it's just so it's such a tight knit community. It seems
Yeah.
obviously there's a bunch of movies that were made in the 80s, but it seems like so many people work to it with each other. Like I talked to this guy Tim Lawrence, Eddie
Isn't that cool?
Yang, like all these different people, and it seemed like everybody knows each other no matter what. Like Jeffrey Farley, did you
In
ever
the
work with him?
'80s, everybody did. What's weird now is
Yeah.
I don't know anybody now. I go
Oh
out
yeah, I
there and
bet.
talk about amongst the industry, and there's, hundreds of people. I'm like, yeah, I don't recognize one of you. But,
Do you think it's people
if
aren't
you were
based
in
in
the '80s, I
California?
know your name, and.
Yeah. Do you think it's because people aren't? Is everybody based in California working at special effects, or with the way the industry is are people spread out doing the work, or
There is a huge amount of people everywhere. When it first started out and everything, there were, a couple of dozen of us in LA that started doing it really, professionally, and then it got to be more, and then there were then they would fly us all over the country and all over the world to do effects in all of these places. And while we were there, we'd pick up assistants, bring in people. Hey, here, so let me show you how to do this. I need help doing this, blah, blah, blah. Well, and those guys got a chance to work on these things and learn how to do the work. And then after 10 years, now they got 10 years experience in doing the work. So now you don't need to fly me to Lithuania to do the job. You got a guy in the country next door who already knows how to do it. So
yeah,
they don't fly us around as much anymore because there are a lot more of us all over. And then with you talk about things like cosplay and things like that, I mean, it's really worldwide at this point, which is why my rubberware company does so well because everybody wants stuff all over the world now, not just a nose for this production or that kind of thing.
do you do a lot of custom work? I gotta check out your website, but is it mostly custom, or is it things you have that you've done in the past
I
that?
do custom work, but we started a company almost 30 years ago,
Oh wow, with your
making.
wife, right? Is that what I read?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Cool.
rubberware. And we started doing that because I was getting calls for like, we need a pig nose tomorrow. Do you have one? Like, well, no, I don't, but um, and so it started coming down to, uh, well, let's make pieces to have in stock ahead of time. And then we thought, well, if we're going to do that, let's offer them through the stores rather than having the people come to us so they can go to the well-stocked makeup store and pick up noses and cuts and wounds and foreheads and
Yeah.
anything alien, this piece and that piece and all that. And so we started doing that in '96, and now we've got a little over 200 pieces and sell them all over the world. And cosplayers love them because this one guy takes our pieces and does the greatest Captain Hook I've ever seen. He's
Really?
so cool looking, just
That's
and
awesome.
and that's just a cosplay costume that he does, and so it's great.
That's cool. Did
And
you meet
no,
your
I
wife in the
don't have
industry,
any
or
job that comes my way either.
yeah? Did your wife work in the industry? Is that how you met her, or?
She's a costume designer, and
Oh,
she
that's neat.
It's why we called our initial company, which is sort of our umbrella company, Sticks and Stones, because we knew everybody was going to talk about us, because we both had, reputational careers before we met. And then when we got married, we knew it was like, well, this is perfect. So she does all our costumes and whatnot. And I do all the prosthetic and lab work and all. And, it allows us the versatility to do just about anything we want to do.
Yeah. Wow, that's really awesome. Did you guys meet on a show?
Um, she was working in a costume shop when she first came to Hollywood, and because she went to college in Hawaii and learned Japanese Hawaiian theater and all of that. But she uh, um she was working in the costume shop, and a friend of mine went into the costume shop and asked her out. So their first date was he brought her over to my house for a game playing party. And well, you know, it was
The
one of
rest
those
is
things where I'm
history.
like, what are you doing with him? But we didn't start dating till 3 years after that. So it was,
Oh,
but that was
okay.
when we started dating. It's because I saw her at the Renaissance Fair and pretty much stalked her, walked around the whole place, and would run up and lean against the tree. Hi.
Oh, hey, you're here
And then go
too?
run up and lean up against the building. Hey, how you doing? And just followed her all day long until she finally said, when are you going to ask me out? And,
Yeah.
you know, in all of my virtuous and suave debonair dating ability, I said, I'm going to Florida tomorrow. So, but I had to go on location for 2 weeks, and I called her when I got back, and we started dating. Our first date was the Magic Castle, and we
Oh,
just had a
cool.
really lovely time. And we probably went out 3 times in the first week we started dating, and then 5 times, and then every night. And she was working on Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. I was working on Batman Returns, and
Oh,
we
wow.
never slept. We just talked. We just communicated, and spent just probably 2 months just talking and just enjoying each other's company, and you know can't help but
That's
fall in
awesome.
love. Can't
No, you can't. It's usually in the most inopportune times. Like I met my wife, we went to high school together. She was a year older. We ran into her in Atlantic City at like two
you?
o'clock in the morning. We bumped into each other and we were like, I was like, oh my God. And then
I
from
know
that
you.
moment, like yeah, she doesn't believe me. But from that moment, I'm like, man, I'm going to marry this person. And then we're
That's awesome.
married. We've been together 12 years, 2 kids, like, but no, I was going to ask because I've talked to some people when they met spouses on shows. I think it's always great because sometimes it's like the worst movie, but it's like
Right,
what spawned from it was a beautiful
right,
thing and a long lasting relationship. That's pretty cool to have somebody that works in kind of the same sector because people are going to buy like the prosthetic. And what do you need with the prosthetic? You need an outfit. So that's cool
right,
that you guys cover all the bases.
right. Yeah, I call working in film in some ways little mini ideal relationships where you get on a show, you meet some people, you're like, hey, you're pretty cool. Hey, we're having fun. That's great and all that. Toward the end of the show, you've been through some stress and you're like, this guy's really getting on my nerves. But then the show's over. Ta-da! It's done. You go your own ways, all that stuff. A couple of years later, you meet up another show. Hey, hi, how you doing? Yeah, we had a great time on that show. That was really great. And after about halfway through the show, you're like, oh yeah, now I remember why I didn't really like that guy. Yeah. But
Yeah,
then the show's over, so you go on again. And so you have these little mini wonderful relationships
you're
without
right.
a whole lot of drama.
Yeah, it's a little summer camp. I helped the actor Larry Hankin write a book, and he
Mm,
talked about like when you're with these people on location for X amount of months, you like become really good friends because they're the only people around. Because it's not like you have
right,
FaceTime. You just had a phone, or you wrote a
right,
letter. So it's really
right,
like, hey, John Aston, you and me are in. She's having a baby with John Hughes. So Larry like became good friends, and he was like really sad when it was over. But then he said he ran into him randomly like years later, and it was like they rekindled this thing that they only had for like 2-3 months, but it's a long
right.
time when
But
you're
you
we
still
see each other
have
every
that
day.
on. It's as if none of that time left. It was all, you just pick up the highlights.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
So it's so cool that like all the things you've worked on, but I think the reason I reached out to you because I think you're in the Canon movie group, and I saw you share something from because you worked on a few. I don't know if the first one was 52 pickup. Was that your first
One of
Canon
the first,
film?
we did 11 films in 8 months, something
Wow,
like that.
that sounds like a Canon
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's a
yeah.
canon story right there.
Up and Tough Guys Don't Dance. We did a handful of fairy tales, The Frog Prince,
Yeah.
a Little Red Riding Hood. What else did I do? Beauty and the Beast, John Savage. Um, we did Gore, a movie called Gore, Gor. I think that was before. I don't know. That was the biggest thing I ever sculpted was on Gore. That was a
Really?
2,000 pounds of clay insert section of a dragon's shoulders, so that the guy could sit on it and they could do insert shots of the dragonfly. So it was
Wow.
huge. We did Going Bananas with Dom DeLuise and
Oh,
made a
wow.
chimpanzee suit for a talking chimp. That was my first and only chimp to date. So, yeah,
No, because
lots
I
of
always just hear stories of the documentaries. Like they obviously, cut corners a lot when it came to, when they
there
got
was
things
never
done.
any
That's why I'm
money.
wearing my Bronson shirt for a little homage to your Canon days. But I always think it's so interesting. And I always think it's so cool whenever I interview people. I look at IMDb's, obviously everything you've worked on, like when you worked with your father, or when
Right.
you're working on even like Ghostbusters isn't on here because they don't have. For some reason, people don't
No,
get
no,
all their
no. Yeah,
credits, especially behind
yeah.
the scenes.
Well, because I don't have credit on Ghostbusters.
No, I know that's what I mean.
Department head, and I don't even have my credit on the movie because there were too many credits submitted, and they didn't want to put an extra spool of film on the end, so they cut like 36 of our credits. So
That's terrible.
ridiculous. Most of those films, Batman Returns, I don't think I have credit on.
Oh no,
But
that's on here. You're definitely. I
do I
saw
have
that on
credit?
here.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
you
That's
got that one.
Yeah,
But
and the thing which was important to me, I'm really glad I got that one. So,
yeah.
and The
No,
Fly
what I
was a
was
good
saying was it.
that as
Oh,
a credit.
the flies a great one. But
Yeah.
it's so cool because people work on so many different movies. But I always pick a few to watch that I've never seen before, and one that really honestly blew me away. And I'm surprised, maybe because it never got a re-release like a lot of those movies do, like Vinegar Syndrome or some of those companies. But World Gone Wild, that
Oh
is an
yeah.
insane movie. What a
That
twisted
was fun.
opening
That was
scene.
great because they just made me department head, makeup and hair and everything. I was in charge of all of it, but I couldn't do a straight makeup to save my life. So when I walked in there, I took my two assistants. They're like, "Well, we've got these two people that we like to use, usually and everything, and you don't have to use them if you don't want to, but if you'd like, we could bring them in." I'm like, "Yeah, bring them in, bring in those two people." And so they had their makeup artist that they liked and all of that stuff. This woman and this older man, and that was great. So all I had to do was worry about the prosthetics and
Yeah.
what weird stuff. I mean, that hubcap gag is really freaking ridiculous. But it was fun. 5 weeks in
Yeah.
Arizona. I enjoyed doing the work. Great actors. Went club hopping with Adam Ant in Tucson. I mean, how random is that? You
That's
know?
very random. Just Bruce Dern. I don't know if the years almost make sense. I think off the top of my head, The Burbs. Maybe The Burbs is '88, but I watched The Burbs a lot.
Uh-huh.
Me and my wife's one of our favorite movies, and he just carries himself. He does that in a lot of movies the way Bruce Dern is, but in this movie, when he first shows up in that opening scene, I'm like, this is him from next across the street. This is,
It's
but
consummate Bruce Dern performance.
yeah, so good.
In fact, I don't really think he was performing. I think he was just being Bruce in that movie.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, and another one which I bet was a lot of fun, just because of the special effects that were involved, and I've never heard of it. And I think the same thing as World Gone Wild is Meet the Hollowheads.
Oh, my dad's film that he directed.
That your dad directed that movie?
Huh?
That's amazing. Was that his
Yeah,
first, or did he do that
his only.
often?
Well, yeah, first, yeah, his first and pretty much only. He did the
Oh
Making
my
Apes thing
god,
recently with another guy who's director, but yeah, Meet the Hollowheads was originally titled Life on the Edge, and he wrote and directed it.
holy crap!
The only thing I don't
That is
like about
amazing.
that movie was that the producers got freaked out midway through that it was maybe too weird, so they kept trying to get him to pull back on it a little bit. And
Ugh.
it could have been so much more fun with the things that we did, like the son's instrument, the chicken looking thing, and all that stuff. We had great ideas of all kinds of things that were going to happen, and producers, money people don't sometimes understand the creativity of an artist. So, they panicked, and still kind of fun. Matt
Yeah, the special
Shackman
effect.
was
Juliet.
that kid. Do you know who that kid is? Matt
Uh,
Shackman?
no. I had the
He used,
IMDb.
he
Let me
used to
see.
be on
Is he?
Just the 10 of Us, which was a sitcom,
Oh
but he's a
yeah.
director now.
Really?
He directs things like, oh, I don't know, little
Oh my
shows
God. WandaVision, Game of Thrones.
that
Wow.
Great kid. He used to hang out in my shop after he finished filming the movie because he was a total effects fan. So he'd hang out at my house, which I have my shop in a garage, and you know he'd come over there from time to time. Good
But
kid.
the people your dad was able to get was like unbelievable. Like Joshua Miller, at that
Josh,
time, he was
yeah,
like
because he
in
was just
every.
fresh off of things like Near Dark.
Oh yeah, he was in everything. Every '80s movie,
Yeah.
Teen Witch, like every weird one too. Like
He's
he's in the one that
terrific.
the kids they wish for their dad to hear their dad died, and they wish for him to come back, and he comes back in a robot. It was like an
I don't
80s
think
weird movie, but he's in that. He's in like
yeah.
everything. And John Glover. John Glover at this
John
point, that was
Glover.
man.
Yeah, my favorite
Yeah.
John Glover role has got to be Scrooged.
Oh yeah.
He plays the
Yeah.
TV executive. That's a great role.
Yeah. But yeah, that's so cool. Your dad
Or
got to
or
direct that. And
52 Pickup, where I blew him up.
52 pickup. The immortal 52 pickup. That's like an interesting canon movie because that was supposed to be one of their early movies, and
Right,
then it got shelved. Because I
right.
interviewed Sam Furstenberg, who did a lot of the ninja movies
Mhm.
for canon, and he was in Israel, and he was going to work on 52 pickup, but then they ended up something happened, and then it didn't get made for 10 years later.
Right.
But wow, man, so many cool things. And then so what would you say over your career? Is there like a moment that was like the cool? I think what you do is so cool. So is there something that you've done that you think is like the coolest? Like when you see it like on film that you were like, holy shit, I made
Oh,
that.
if you want to talk the work in itself, I think the stuff we did for Ghostbusters is amazing. And it's a
Yeah.
film that I will still sit and watch every single time I see it on.
Yeah.
The Fly is great, amazing work, deserved the Academy Award that year, I thought. A lot of that stuff. There's, every show has a certain amount of things that I like about it, but some of our best work would be like the Power Rangers movie, the costumes for that. Um, having my wife involved to be able to do them just really took us, I think, our work to another level. Um, but I'll say my name dropping story. That's the
Okay.
proudest moment of my career, pretty much, because it is such a big name dropping moment. My brother brought me in. My brother was working on. He did the Tom Cruise makeup in Tropic Thunder, where he plays the
So
studio
your brother's in
executive
the
who's
industry too?
oh yeah. And my brother's got the Oscar
Wow.
for 2009's Star Trek.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Anyway, he hired me to work with him on Mission Impossible 3. And I was coming in to babysit they do the transformation mask where they pull it on and, the Mission Impossible gag. So they've got this box which got some masks in it of different stages of Philip Seymour Hoffman and stuff like that. And so I'm supposed to watch all of those things for him while he's off making up Philip so he can do the neck piece so Philip was like this, and then they go to a mask where Tom pulls off the mask and it's Tom, So they're doing the scene where they're making the mask and going to take it off and put it on Tom while my brother's off working. So all of a sudden I hear them calling for my brother, and so I walk in. I'm like, what can I do? I don't. He's off making up Philip, and I look around the room, and it's Tom Cruise, J.J. Abrams, Ving Rhames, the head of Paramount, Michelle Burke, who's the department head, the first AD, and my brother's assistant, and they're all looking at me. And JJ's like, can we make these eyebrows stay on the mask? I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that. Do we have extra eyebrows? Yeah, no problem. Okay, great. Give me these. Okay, I looked at my brother's assistant and said, go mix up some silicone, or go get some silicone and mix it on the way back. Like, okay, great. And I looked at the first AD and I said, I need 5 minutes. And the first AD goes, okay, we'll find something to do in the 5 minutes. And so, Hugo comes back. I put the eyebrows on. I stick them down. The silicone setting. Okay, great. It's about done. I go up to the first AD. I go, okay, I'm done now. You guys can go. And he looks at his watch. He goes, that's 3 minutes. I go, sorry, and walked away. And I was so proud of myself because that morning I found out that production was costing on that show $65,000 a minute.
What?
And I had asked for 5 of them. And then when I delivered in 3, I'm like, I just saved you $130,000. And they were like, yay, Rob! So
that's a
kind of
lot
my
of
big
money.
name dropping moment and kind of proudest moment of my career because of the people that were involved,
Yeah, and the
And
pressure.
I'm the only person to save it at the moment.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. How about for so Batman Returns you worked on? Did you work on DeVito or
They brought me in originally because they were so far behind, and I made most of the molds for the Penguin and Danny DeVito costume. Made his full body master. I made the thing for his hips and his belly and all these things. I engineered the belly so that it was jiggly and all of that kind of stuff for his full-on costume. And then they moved me to, when his molds were finished, I moved to finishing, and I started doing patching and seaming and fixing of reject parts that for Batman and 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 Catwoman pieces and things like that. So
wow.
I worked on cowls for Catwoman, fixing stitches and fixing suits and all of little details. Sorry, if a
It's
piece
okay.
had, hey, stop it. If a piece had a hole in it or something, I fix it, or a seam down the back or something.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, going outside. Look at them. Nice. Okay. Oh my goodness. Ta-da!
Like my dogs, they can sense like a dog like 3 houses down walking and they just go nuts. And I look outside and I'm like, there's nobody here. And then like a minute later, a dog's walking past.
Right. Well, they're getting close to feeding time, so I guess they're getting a little irritable.
They're getting a little antsy.
Like, come
Oh
on, you
man.
guys got like 45 minutes till dinner, so stop it.
Yeah. No, that's so cool. Man, one I have to ask about because I think it's an infamous movie just because of everything that was involved, but Super Mario Brothers.
Mm.
Because
Yeah,
that one I
13
talked
weeks
to the
worth of work for 13 seconds worth of footage. My work, anyway.
Really?
Yeah. All I did was
Let
the killing of King Koopa. So
Oh my
we
god,
did
really?
stage 1 on Dennis Hopper with a big smile, stage 2 on another actor that had an even bigger smile and all these teeth and kind of lizard skin and all of that. and then 2 more stages that were animatronic puppets that were up in a big cement thing hanging in the sky. So, and then everything between that is all some of the worst CG you ever saw in your life. But you know, so my stuff is seen literally for 13 seconds.
Isn't it crazy? Like when you're working on that, can you guess? Well, I guess when you have the script and you know what you're doing, do you have any idea of like they say, okay, Rob, we need this to be X amount of seconds long or anything like that? No.
No, no, I never got any of that. We just knew what the sequence was going to look like, and what the heads kind of needed to do. My friend Bud McGrew did the animatronics inside, and I did all the cosmetic skins and the makeup and things like that for the puppets. Um, but the day we arrived on set in North Carolina, the directors left. They quit.
Wow.
So I was directed by the camera guy, Dean Semler, awesome cinematographer. I mean, no complaints at all, but he was our director for the whole sequence and everything. I was happy. I got paid well for the job, and I got 3 weeks on a SAG contract, so I'm good. It
Yeah,
was great.
the check clears.
See it.
That's what matters.
Yeah. Well, I learned a long time ago watching my father in the industry that in the end, ultimately, all you really get out of the project is your pictures. There's a movie, but the work in it is not really your work. It's a combination of everybody's work involved. So, but your work, what you do, what you're proud of, all you get is your photographs of it. So I take good photographs of the things that I do and try to maintain those. But what they do in the film, I don't really care.
Yeah. No, you're right. So, do you keep since you have your own shop? I know obviously because there's new things you're working on, and so it's hard to keep a lot of stuff. But are there some things that you've kept along the way, like you're working on the thing or scripts? Do you keep anything like that?
Most of the stuff that I work on rots out if it's made out of rubber. It doesn't
Oh, that's true.
last. You know, I've got the molds for the things. If I want to cast them, I can. If it's
Yeah.
something that I made myself, whatever. If it's something from an old film, something else, not really. I used to have some pieces from Ghostbusters, but their foam rotted out and whatnot. So I think I have an eye from a miniature terror dog, but it's just a
Oh
little
yeah.
red. It's just a little red ball with an LED in it. So big
Yeah.
deal. But yeah, a guy made a special collectible, and he sent me a copy of it because it's supposed to be from a mold of the original that I sculpted. But it happens to be the thing that I think is the most ridiculous thing I've ever been asked to sculpt. So it's like, well, sort of bittersweet. It's like, yay, I got this, but oh my God, it's that. It was Frank the Rabbit from Donnie
For
Darko.
oh, yo, you worked on that. Wow. You think that's
I
this?
sculpted his face for my friend. That's all I did. He kept going, what the hell? This is what he wants, right? Okay. Oh, this thing's ridiculous. It looked like Bugs Bunny's skull on acid, you know? And he loved it. He thought it was great, and everybody was happy, but crazy. And then
Yeah.
now
No. I.
what I do is I'm making displays of the makeups that I do in my classes. If I do a
Oh,
really
cool. I was
cool
gonna ask you
class
how your
for
classes. That's pretty
a
cool.
character, yeah.
How long have you been doing that? Working at Stan Winston.
Well, I only did those 2 videos for Stan Winston's, but I've been
Oh,
teaching
okay.
most of my career. I've only been like 2009. I guess I started getting paid to teach. I worked at Joe Blasco's school and started doing some things there and developed my own because they didn't have any programs. So I developed my own program and set it all up. And then I started traveling it to different places. And now I do it in my lab as well. So, because you're never going to learn in a school, or you're going to learn in a school, but you're never going to work in a school.
Yeah.
So I teach in my lab, which is a functioning effects lab. And so you really get an idea of what it's like to be on a job, especially when there's other jobs going on around you while you're learning, you know.
Yeah.
But then I develop these characters, anything I like to do. And, it's nice not having to get up early and go on set. And it's nice to be able to kind of you know spill my information before the new generations who don't know yet. Now I can tell them about the old days too, and this is what they used to do then, and now that's what we do now. Or then we did this and now you're doing that. And so I can really give them some background and history of all of it. Most of my students don't leave after I've taught them. They kind of hang out.
Yeah.
you know, some become assistants sometimes. Some go out and get jobs and then come back and do their job here because, they don't have a spot of their own. And, I've got space and then I can coach them through their job. And so they really enjoy that.
That's awesome. No, because I think I don't like CG that much at all. So when
It's
it
got
comes
its
to the
place. It
practical,
does what it does. It does what it does well.
no, it
I
does.
think it
Yeah.
works best when you do both. If you're going to do a monster for a movie, do it practical. It looks best. And
Hmm.
then use CG to fix everything that didn't work.
Yeah. No, that makes
Looks
sense.
great.
Yeah.
Everybody gets a job and it's fabulous. You can use CG to do the things that are kind of impossible for the practical thing to do, you know? And then everybody gets a job.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. That makes a lot of sense. I just hate when movies just do CG. I just
Sure.
love knowing
Well,
that
unless it's a
what
Pixar
went into
movie,
that
and then those are
practical
my
effect.
favorite movies.
Oh yeah, no, yeah,
You know, if it's a Pixar movie, I don't care. CG is great. If you put reality in a CG in a Pixar movie, it looks weak.
yeah. Did you ever dabble when that whole change happened? Did you ever
No,
dabble in CG at all?
no, not really. I did a weekend, an Adobe Photoshop weekend, because they wanted us to do a bunch of Universal horror movie monsters and stuff, and I had done a Frankenstein, so they brought me in to do the Frankenstein, and we spent a day taking pictures of all these great characters, the Wolf Man and the Gill Man and all of that stuff, and then for the next 2 days we made movie posters with them. Um, so
Cool.
that was fun. But I'd never opened a Photoshop program before, and I have not since. Um, I play with clay, you know. I have some of my
Yeah.
sculptures scanned, I just recently did anyway. So I'm gonna experiment with the prints from that and making stuff out of it. But nah, I play with clay.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Has a lot changed in it, like from the material end of it? I know you said like when you're teaching the students like what changed over the years, but is like clay, is there much changes that was done to clay since when you started?
There's dozens of different versions of clay out there, but we're to pretty much stick to one or two. I use a water-based clay. I use a an oil-based clay, and brands to me are not important or any of that stuff. I don't really care as long as it feels right and does what I need it to do. They've adapted some makeup materials, things like that. We don't we use a lot more silicone for prosthetics these days than foam latex, but you know um for a long time, people are like, "Oh my God, silicone's going to kill foam latex." But the truth is, they both work for what they both work for best.
Yeah.
And and they're all just more tools for the toolbox, is all. But it's
Yeah.
good to know why we went from this material to this material to this material over time, because then well, God, I can always go back to this one if I need to, It's part of why I called my company Sticks and Stones, not only because everybody would talk about it, but because really about the basics. It's really about your foundation, and your sticks and your stones. You know how to build things from scratch. You are much more able to create and provide a product for a company.
Yeah. Are you getting? I know you're doing the prosthetics and people, through your website and your company. Are are you doing things for movies still? I'm sure people will reach out to you, right?
What was the last movie I did? It's been a couple of years now, but uh, they come to me for little things sometimes. Like I said, my students come to me to do movies all the time,
Yeah,
because
that's
they're
gonna be
always doing
cool.
short films and whatnot and all that stuff. So, there's a little bit. I think maybe the last thing. There's a great makeup artist that I came up with that we were trained kind of together, but he was older than me and worked at my dad's place, uh, Francisco Perez, and he brings me shows every once in a while. We did one a couple of years ago called Mr. Brooks with
Oh yeah, Kevin
Kevin
Costner,
Costner.
right?
He does Kevin
Yeah.
Costner's movies. He does all that stuff. So we did a body for Mr. Brooks. And then he brought me a half a dozen effects or so for Netflix's The Babysitter, and that was fun
Oh
doing.
yeah. Oh, that's
Just
a great. I
cool,
love that
crazy.
movie.
I love it. It's along the lines of what is it, Tucker and Dale? I
Yeah,
just love those.
exactly.
It's like, wait, you guys, what? It's just fun, you know.
Yeah, no. And
Entertaining.
what's her name? That I'm pulling up her name because I feel so bad because I love her. Samara
Whoop, you
Weaving.
froze up.
She's one of the. I feel like every movie she's in is a hit.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, she's smart. She's got great management and knows how to negotiate things right and all of that stuff. It's just, it's good management. Really, really comes down to that. And and if it's not her management, it's because she's smart enough to control her management and do it the way she wants to. So
Yeah. Wow, this has been so much fun. I love talking to people behind the scenes because I think and like even in my head before we started talking because I've talked to other people like Steve Neal, like I mentioned, Eddie
right.
Yang, Tim Lawrence, and it's like everybody, the tight knit community of it. I think that's what the coolest thing out. Like it's people working together. On the other side, it's like, hey, we're going for this role. I know obviously people interview for to do special effects on movies and shows and stuff, but
Sure.
I think it's pretty awesome. And I love the fact that just your whole family. That is insane. You had no choice. You and your brother had no choice of or is it just you and your brother or is there another sibling?
No, well, when my brother and I grew up, my father remarried and they adopted a son who's now 30 something, I guess. Um, but he invented a program called Kit Bash 3D for CG people to do environments. It's backgrounds and all that stuff, but it's a kit. So you can buy the kit and assemble it the way you want to and customize it any way you want to or all that. And now that gets used in all of these other top game companies and things like that and all that. So, yeah, he just moved his whole company of like 30 employees up to Portland, Oregon on his dime. So I think he's doing all right.
Yeah, he's doing good. Your dad had like this magic touch. The fact that man, amazing. The fact
Well,
that he
my
was doing
dad
it
and
up until
his brother,
yeah.
my uncle Ellis, I know he did the makeup for Christopher Lloyd in the Back to the Future movies and whatnot, but he goes back. He did the makeup on All in the Family, and
Wow.
then he went into mechanical effects and stuff, and he machined all the parts for the Terminator.
Oh my god.
So
And
my
you worked
my
on Terminator 2,
grandfather,
no?
all his kids used to make dummies and things like that for them. But then my uncle and my dad started the first effects company off the major studio lots with John Chambers because John had a contract with the CIA and couldn't do the work under the eyes of the studios, so they left the studios and started their own place. And then John left, and my dad and my uncle kept their places, and then my dad kept his place, and my uncle and he split up, and um, you know, my other uncle, my
Wow.
mom's brother, was head of makeup on things like NYPD Blue and all those old cop shows, and Falcon Crest, and you know, so
It was a family affair. You guys could have
that's
done your own movie.
right. I
Everyone.
say we're a lot like the Westmore family, but the Burmans
Yeah.
didn't have a publicist.
Oh man, this has been awesome, Rob. I know you just mentioned it, but Terminator, but you worked on Terminator too, right?
I came in and did some foam work for them for a couple of weeks.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
They were having trouble getting something worked out, and so I came in and worked out their problems and then left to do Superboy.
Superboy, yeah.
The Adventures of
Oh man.
Superboy.
Oh, this has been so cool. No, I loved I'm happy we were able to connect. And
Yeah,
yeah, thanks for sharing your story. That's so cool. Because you don't know much when you look at somebody's IMDb or you see their names in a credit, like it's really wild, just your whole family history. Like in
right.
the industry. And the fact that there was people that obviously they were related, like your uncle was related to your mom, but the fact that just everyone, that's insane.
We were a very magnetic family, and the people that gravitated toward us uh, benefited by learning how to do it and work in the industry and have careers and all that stuff. And very open people. My father, very giving and open and wonderful. He'd take all the neighborhood kids near his shop, who he didn't know any of these kids. He'd
Yeah,
go
yeah.
take them out on his boat on the weekends and things like that. So, you know, it was a fun environment. Great place to be.
That's awesome. So cool that you are giving back and able to teach the next generations and then, keep that going.
I get to be the smartest guy in the room. It's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it, man.
Sure,
Those
anytime.
dogs can get fed now. They'll be happy.
That's right. Come back around and we'll do it again.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your night.
Yeah, you too. Have fun. Bye bye.